enthusiasm on this production line is inspiring. These 18 students are the management and workers of Tubular, a company formed to manufacture and market the Yarbar wine wrap under the Young Achievers program. The students are learning the actual principles of business management, working to production guidelines and teamwork to achieve a final goal. But speaking to Chairman Shubho Banerjee, all is not exactly as it happens in the real world. You're chairman of this particular group. Have you had much problem with the labourers and the workers?
No, there's no such thing as labourers and the workers here. We all work on the production line. It's all one thing.
Is there a union involved?
No, they thought of starting one once, but I told them it wasn't on.
The company is formed for a period of 28 weeks. In this time, the students come into Tube Makers, their sponsor company, once a week after school to work on production and to conduct the inevitable board meetings. Today, after the chairman's opening address and reports from the marketing, finance and production directors, the agenda turned to the pressing question of whether to make the wine racks in a second colour. Tubular hopes to have sold 500 racks by the time the company closes. And with this sort of enthusiasm, there seems little doubt they'll make it.
The accident happened at about 4 o'clock this morning and was noticed by two men passing in a sedan. Police say this blue panel van had left the road, crashing through the safety rail and landed in the water 7 metres from the roadway. The driver, a man in his 20s, was found floating near the vehicle. He died instantly. The passenger was taken to Royal Newcastle Hospital and is now in a satisfactory condition. Police believe there may be a second passenger involved and have asked the public for assistance with their inquiries.
Dr Peter Walensky was speaking at the Newcastle City Hall today at the invitation of the Australian Institute of Public Administration. He said it's too early to judge the impact of proposed government changes to the public service, but seemed optimistic any streamlining would be accommodated.
We don't yet know quite what those restraints are going to be. I think, though, that the public service has on a number of occasions been asked to do more with less, and I guess that we'll try and do that again.
Dr Walensky has been chairman of the Public Service Board for just under 3 years. He has a string of university degrees, was Gough Whitlam's principal private secretary, and has been an advisor to the OECD and the World Bank on administrative reform and social policy issues. He says that the impact of government changes to the public service should be clearer after the budget in August.
Well, I think at this stage there are a range of options that the government is looking at, and I think quite a number of them are positive and will streamline the public service, but we've still got to wait and see what decisions are taken.
On the banks of the Wyong River, Camp Breakaway has begun once again. To open the week of planned activities, a special games day helped everyone to get to know each other. And there are somewhat dubious tactics on the sporting fields. It's the third year that Camp Breakaway has been held. The camp was started by the Rotary Club, and Breakaway is just that, a chance for young physically handicapped people under the age of 25 to break away from their parents and guardians and to meet new friends in the form of their helper and other campers. Teamwork is what the week is all about, but today it was each sportsman for himself. And judging by the results, nobody really minded if the rules were slightly bent, because according to some competitors, 2 hands are better than 1.
Question on the About 50 delegates from all over Australia and New Zealand are listening to a variety of specialised speakers over these 3 days. The course was designed by Newcastle's Dr Paul Moffat.
It's a bridge between the general practitioner and the specialists, so that the general practitioner now will be able to be in contact with these people who we've highly trained in a very small, narrow field, which is diabetes. General practitioner's got enough on his plate. He's got to be an expert on 1,000 things. So we're just giving him a resource that he can refer to.
What do you hope that at the end of this you'll achieve?
Inspiration to the diabetes educators, that's the first thing. I hope that they'll go away filled with knowledge and inspired to stimulate other diabetes educators to see themselves as a very important part of the public health.
Koala Produce, the proud child of Meredith and Stephen Lang, is innovative. Drip irrigation replaces the more conventional spray, reducing the risk of disease and increasing the efficient use of water. Fertiliser is fed into the drip system, and the sandy soil is an ideal medium for plant growth. The Langs believe the system can and should be applied to other farming situations.
The system can be adapted to any growing operation. It's just a matter of whether you've got the money to set it up or not, because it is expensive in the short term, but in the long run you're looking at less labour, less electricity bills, less energy input.
It's an idea styled on the successful use of the desert in Israel to grow vegetables. In fact, the irrigation equipment here is supplied by the Israeli firm Core, and it's an idea that's working. This crop of broccoli may fetch from $14 to $30 a case, and the Langs will produce 1,800 cases of it. Not bad for a 4-year-old operation, but it highlights the Langs' distinctive philosophy, a commitment to producing quality crops and aggressive marketing.
With Koala Produce we're trying to produce very high quality produce that is very competitive in the market. We believe that actually growing the produce is only half the effort. The selling and marketing of it is every bit as important.
Shooter Dalgleish. They want to keep him well. Are a hot outfit. It's been strengthened this year with the addition of former Geelong star James Crawford, who's now fitted into the game plan of coach Bobby Turner. Throw in the Australian captain and playmaker, the General Phil Smythe, the Snake Herb McGeechan, Mel Dalgleish, Jamie Kennedy, Tim Morrissey, and the super tall Andy Campbell, and you have a basketball team. They are 10 and 4, and that speaks volume. The Falcons can do it in attack, especially if Mike Johnson hits a streak from outside. Their best player, Wayne McDaniel, will have a busy night, as will other strong defenders Ian Robilliard, Jim Moran and Buster Matheny. We look forward to an exciting match. Right on target once more.
This year, apprentices in men's hairdressing, milling, garment assembly and 10 other trades will join apprentices from the 13 trades who competed in the first Hunter Work Skills competition in 1984. Secretary of the competition committee, David Sadler, says the increased number of trade categories competing this year reflects the importance trades play in the workforce of the hunter.
We believe that Newcastle, being an industrial centre, should be well represented, and we would like to hold as many trade categories as we can for the region.
Andrew Burke, Robin Hill and Scott McHugh won their trade category at the local level in 1984 and were finalists in the national competition in Brisbane last year. They say increased confidence in their work skills is the biggest plus they gained from the experience. Andrew has since been promoted to service manager at the car yard where he works, and Robin has bought her own hairdressing business.
You learn what all the other girls are doing.
This year's Hunter competition to prepare for the national finals in Adelaide early next year.
The Tamworth Dairy Society went into receivership in September last year with total debts of $10.8 million. In April this year, a meeting of unsecured creditors voted to sell the business by tender. The tenders closed early this month. Today, the receiver manager, Mr. Errol Chant, announced the land and buildings, plant and equipment and business owned by the Tamworth Society had been sold to the Hunter Valley Cooperative. The tender price was $5,425,000. On top of this will be the value of stock, which is expected to be about $800,000 when the business is taken over on the 1st of September. The sale of the Dairy Society to a Hunter-based factory is likely to draw some criticism from people who believed it should have remained in local hands. Errol Chant, though, says there's no right for sour grapes. The locals had their chance to keep the factory locally owned.
Paul Kaslik is the current leader of the 4-round series and one of the top riders in the area. He scored his first win in the King of the Hunter in round 3 at Barley Ranch Raceway and has improved gradually from his first round 5th place and second round 3rd. On the point score now, he's just 4 points ahead of Cessnock's motorcycle king Chris Watson and a further 3 from Kevin Horton of Wollongong. But both these riders will miss the weekend. Watson is in Europe representing Australia and Horton is injured. And so Kaslik is in a very good position to win his first King of the Hunter this Sunday.
I haven't won as many races as Chris just yet because Chris has been in it a lot longer and he's been in the senior ranks of short circuit racing for longer than what I have, so he's reached the top level of what he could not go no further.
So how far are you hoping to go?
As far as Chris Watson, hopefully, which is, you can't do no better at all, win everything.
The Tamworth Dairy Society went into receivership in September last year with total debts of $10.8 million. In April this year, a meeting of unsecured creditors voted to sell the business by tender. The tenders closed early this month. Today, the receiver manager, Mr. Errol Chant, announced the land and buildings, plant and equipment and business owned by the Tamworth Society had been sold to the Hunter Valley Cooperative. The tender price was $5,425,000. On top of this will be the value of stock, which is expected to be about $800,000 when the business is taken over on the 1st of September.
It would have required an amount of $7 million from the land and buildings, plant and equipment to be able to pay the creditors 100 cents in the dollar. We received 5.425, which was the best tender put in, and the creditors will get 50 cents in the dollar.
Mr. Chan said a lot of interest had been expressed in the sale, but on the question of the numbers of tenders received and where they came from, he was much less forthcoming.
No, I'm not prepared to tell you that.
Mr. Chan said he had been assured the Hunter Cooperative would continue to operate the factory along much the same lines as before.
I don't think that they are doing it for the purpose of stripping the guts out of it as been inferred on 1 or 2 occasions by the previous chairman. I don't think that's likely to happen.
Definitely not.
Mr. Peter Doyle, the chairman of the Hunter Cooperative, said the Tamworth purchase would more than double his company's production.
We are looking forward to certainly expanding, if possible, the operation up here.
However, Mr Doyle did say that some rationalisation of the Tamworth operation would be necessary and some jobs could be lost.
We would be only looking at a very small number of being have to laid off at this time, that we would be unable to re-employ.
The sale of the Dairy Society to a Hunter-based factory is likely to draw some criticism from people who believed it should have remained in local hands. Errol Chant, though, says there's no right for sour grapes. The locals had their chance to keep the factory locally owned.
Graham Mullane was today preparing to leave the King Street law practice that he himself established, leaving it in the hands of his partners. At 39 years of age, Mr Mullane has been a practising solicitor for 15 years, specialising in litigation or court work. He's also the chairman of the Royal Newcastle Hospital, the secretary of the local branch of the Law Society, and is very prominent in the scouting movement. On top of all that, he finds time to devote to his wife and 3 children aged from 8 down to just 1. Mr Mullane says the appointment will mean changes to his lifestyle, but he'll be just as busy and have just as many challenges. And he isn't daunted by the spate of violent attacks on the court and its judges.
The violence thing's been overplayed. I think when you take into account the fact that there are nearly 50 judges and 18 registries, that there's been a very limited amount of violence, and I think that's part of society. It's not a special thing for the family court. I think that society's become a bit more violent in the last decade, so I don't see it as a major problem for a new judge.
What do you think? What new fresh ideas will you be bringing to the family court in Newcastle?
I don't know about fresh ideas, but I think I have certain strengths, perhaps all-round experience in litigation in other courts as well as the family court, and also an interest in efficiency and seeing the system work well. And Newcastle's got a very good tradition in that area. The registry here is renowned for being one of the best in the country.